Hello, everyone. My name is Donna Gilligan from Scéal Heritage Consultancy. For Heritage Week, on behalf of the Kilskeagh Heritage Committee in Galway, I'd like to give you an introduction to a Heritage Council funded project I'm working on with the group currently. This is a project which aims to recover their community heritage of a church and graveyard site, which has unfortunately become very overgrown and inaccessible over many years. So just to give a little bit of an introduction to the project, in 2023, the Kilskeagh Heritage Committee was approved for funding from the Heritage Council Community Heritage Grant Scheme. And the funding was to commission archaeological and ecological reports on the site of the old Kilskeagh Church and Graveyard. Now, the reason for the reports was to help facilitate future cleanup and clearance of the site to allow access, because while it is a very important site, over many years it has become completely overgrown and inaccessible. And the committee hoped to make it accessible again and to preserve and respect the site and continue to allow access and protection of the site long into the future. So in advance of any of those works, an archaeological impact assessment and an ecological impact assessment were required as best practice, and really as a way of helping guide the cleanup works in the future. So the reports will guide any future works carried out, and they'll ensure that no damage is done to the site. The permission will then be sought to begin the cleaning work on a voluntary basis. So permission will be sought from the National Monument Service to allow any changes to the site or any level of clear up. And it will be carried out by the Kilskeagh Heritage Committee and any other volunteers in the area. And it will be under the guidance of the archaeologist, which is myself, Donna Gilligan, and the ecologist, John Lusby. So just to speak firstly about the ecological impact assessment, which is being compiled by ecologist John Lusby. The ecological assessment consists of an appraisal of the likely impacts to wildlife of development or changes to the site. And on the photograph on the right-hand side, you can get an idea of what the site currently looks like. It is completely covered by a large amount of tree cover and scrub cover, and there are several wildlife habitats within that. So it was really important that we had a good overview of the ecological assessment of the site and of any potential things that we needed to be aware of to make sure that there was absolutely minimal impact to the flora and fauna within the area for future cleanup of the site. So the ecological assessment will also include an overview of the plants and wider habitats in the area to ensure all the value of the site is recorded and to inform any future clearance work. So John Lusby has already recorded several species within the area of the Kilskeagh Graveyard and Church site. Just to give an overview, I suppose, of some of the bird species that he has recorded. On the left here, you can see the goldcrest. On the right, the black cap. On the left, the chiffchaff. On the right, the long-tailed tit. On the left, the whitethroat. On the right, the willow warbler. On the left, the goldfinch. And then on the right, again, another overview, another view of how the site currently looks, and to give you an idea, I suppose, of the level of tree and scrub cover and why there's such rich wildlife habitats within the area. And the ecological impact assessment will give a very good overview of that within the environs of the Kilskeagh Church and Graveyard site. Just to give an introduction to the archaeological impact assessment then. So this really looks at the archaeological implications of future cleanup of the site. And it combines an in-person site inspection with a desktop study of the area of the site, and really it looks at the historical and the archaeological significance of the area. So as well as the church and graveyard, all of the monuments and places of historical feature around the site and the environs. And overall, the archaeological impact assessment provides professional guidance and information for the progress of future cleanup of the site when it is approved by the National Monument Service. So again, to show, I suppose, the current condition of the site of the church and graveyard is now completely overgrown, and there's no accessibility at all to the immediate location of the church and graveyard. Currently, they cannot be visited. There's no access, there's no visible structures that can be seen. Everything is completely overgrown and inaccessible. So most of the work for the archaeological impact assessment is taken from desktop studies, from research, from maps, and from earlier surveys before the site reached the level of overgrowth that it's now currently at. So to talk a little bit about the church as part of the site first, the church and graveyard site is recorded on the first Ordnance Survey map in 1846 as Kilskeagh Church in ruins, with the burial ground and a wooden cross also noted, and I'll come back to that in a little while. So as far back as 1846, the church is in ruins. It's proposed that it is a medieval church, which seems likely, particularly with the level of ruin at that stage in the 19th century, and with information that we have from the surveys that took place before the site became inaccessible. A survey conducted by National Monuments in 1984 noted the poor condition of the church as far back as then, which said the site consists of the remains of a rectangular church aligned east-west, which are in very poor condition. The walls are badly collapsed and are overgrown with grass and moss. Both the interior and exterior areas are heavily overgrown by briars, hawthorns and blackthorns. Approximate length of church, 16 metres. Approximate width of church, 9 metres. Now, we have no surviving images of what the church would have looked like, unfortunately. So these surveys that were carried out by National Monuments back in the 80s and 90s are hugely valuable for our understanding of what was in place at that stage. So to speak a little bit about the graveyard itself then, the National Monuments Report records that the graves are marked by single unworked limestone blocks and their exact date is unknown. They are probably associated with the medieval church, but may also be earlier or later than this. The graveyard is L-shaped in plan. It is enclosed by a stone wall, now grass covered. The majority of burials contained within this are marked by single blocks of limestone. 2 exceptions to this occurs. One in the northwest quadrant, which consists of a worked headstone, now recumbent. It bears an inscription which has been greatly eroded and is now illegible. It probably belongs to the 19th century. The other burial is marked by a small block of worked stone, probably a portion of door jamb from the church. Other graves are formed by low rectangular piles of stone, with a single stone marking it at its east end, or in some cases at both ends. One of the important things we have to remember about the Kilskeagh burial ground is that it appears to have been in use well into the 20th century. The Kilskeagh Heritage Committee have spoken to a number of people in the community who have links to people buried within the grounds. So we know that that whole burial site was in use for a very long extended period. It goes well beyond the potential medieval date of the church and goes into the 20th century for its use as a burial ground at least. And this fact really heightens the importance of the site to the local community because they can directly trace their local heritage and connections to the ground within living memory. So just to give a little idea, I suppose, of the ruins of the site, on the right-hand side, there are 2 photographs, and I apologise for their quality. I don't have the original, from a 2002 survey, and they show the level of overgrowth that was in place even as far back as 21 years ago. The moss and the grass that we can see in the photograph is covering what may have been some of the original walls of the structures. And you can see the level of overgrowth that's there at this stage. So nowadays, what has come, in the 21 years following is much more inaccessible again. One of the interesting things again about the site, I mentioned a little while ago, is that a wooden cross is associated with it, and it's listed on the earliest Ordnance Survey maps as in a very close location to the church and graveyard. And the Ordnance Survey letters note that Kilskeagh, at which tradition says there was a market held, the cross of which still remains. Now, there are no visible remains of the cross left, and I haven't been able to trace anybody having living memory of seeing the cross in place. But it's an important thing for us to be aware of, that it's within the vicinity of the church and graveyard site. And Kilskeagh's status as a marketplace is given further credence with the information that its market crane was apparently still in place in the area in 1942. In a local history, Joyce records that the market crane is still there. So it does give us an idea, I suppose, of what we might encounter. For anyone who hasn't seen a market crane before, on the right-hand side with the picture of the stone house, that's the market crane hanging from it. This one is in Gort in Galway. And the market crane is basically, it would have been used to weigh things on market days, such as grain or flour. And again, they could have been made mostly from metal, but also they could have been made from wood as well. So it's important for us to know ahead of any works on the site of what may be within the vicinity. So what happens next? Our next steps in the project. So following the completion of the archaeological impact assessment, it will be submitted to the National Monuments Service with a letter of intent for future surface cleanup of the site. And once that is granted by National Monuments, the cleanup can begin, and it'll take place during the approved hedge cutting season, the one stipulated under the Wildlife Act. So any of the cleanup works will be guided by the advice of the archaeological and the ecological assessments. The project archaeologist, myself, will deliver a toolbox talk to the volunteers who will be taking part in the cleanup works in order to make them aware of what kind of steps need to be taken. This is a very sensitive site with a lot of historic and archaeological importance, and to make the volunteers aware of what kind of things they might encounter and how they react to finding things of note. And the project archaeologist really has a role in ongoing works and providing advice and consultation all the way throughout the cleanup. So then on to future outcomes. So following the approval to begin the works, the Kilskeagh Heritage Committee hope to get started. And the group aims to once again provide access to the site, to hopefully uncover the area of the church and graveyard to get an idea of its perimeters and its appearance, and mainly to allow people to visit this important site again, and especially into the future as well, to keep it protected and preserved for the future. So just to finish up by saying thank you very much for watching this presentation. The report documents will be submitted to the Kilskeagh Heritage Committee, but anyone who wishes to lend a hand to the future cleanup project can get in touch with the Kilskeagh Heritage Committee through their Facebook page. The group name is the Kilskeagh Church and Graveyard Custodians, or by email at kilskeaghheritage@gmail.com. Just to finish by saying we are very grateful to the Heritage Council for their support of this project. We feel it's a very important project, that Kilskeagh Church and Graveyard are an important site. It's something of great importance to the community, and this work will help protect the site from further deterioration, and again will allow access once again by its local community. So thank you very much for listening.